Welcome to our first Howard County Delegation Committee meeting of the 2022 year. Our agenda today, we'll start with the LBIs and Senator Lamb will guide us on that discussion. But first, we're going to go over just a few rules of the road. In case you are not aware, agendas will go out by the Friday prior to the meeting at the latest. Members may invite guests each week to answer questions during discussion of a bill on the agenda. Please send names and email addresses of the guests you would like to invite to Abby by 5 p.m. the Monday before the meeting. Guests will not be presenting, but they will be there for questions. Bill and LBI drafts are on the delegation's shared drive, which was shared prior to the November local bill hearing. There are also proposed legislation pages of the website, which you are linked to as well. If you have any issues with the shared file, please check with Abby. Amendments and other meeting materials will be distributed via email and the share folders. If you want to ask a question, could you please raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, or if for some reason we don't see that and you want to type your question in the chat, you can do that too. We will call on you to speak through those two methods. Everybody knows where the raise hand button, it's on the reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And with that, I hand it over to Chairman Lamb to take us with the LBIs.
All right, thank you, Chair Watson. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to get started with the top of the agenda, which are the legislative bond initiatives. There are 21 legislative bond initiatives. Similar to past years, we're going to take the ones that everyone is okay with as a consent calendar. So in other words, we will vote on them as one block, except for the ones that people would like to remove off. That will mean that your vote for the ones that are on the consent calendar will register for all of the LBIs that are on that consent calendar. You can choose to vote yes or no, and all of them would be designated that way for you. So of the 21, like to see from any of the members of the delegation if they'd like to remove any from a consent calendar. All right, seeing no hands raised and no objections, we will take all 21 of them as a consent calendar. So your vote on this will be the vote for all 21 legislative bond initiatives. Could we have the delegation administrator, Abby, could you call the
Move to approve the bond legislative initiatives.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. A little rusty here. All right. So, Abby, will you go ahead and call the roll of the delegation for the vote?
Yes. Senator Lamb?
Yes.
Delegate Watson?
Yes.
Senator Guzzoni?
Yes.
Senator Hester?
Yes.
Delegate Atterbury?
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol?
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark?
Yes.
Delegate Hill?
Yes.
Delegate Kittleman?
Yes.
Delegate Novotny?
Yes.
Delegate Pendergrass? Delegate Pendergrass?
I don't think she's present.
I'll mark her as absent. Delegate Terrassa?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Delegate Pendergrass can't make today's meeting.
Sounds good. So I think similar to past year's rules, we will send that out to the votes that take place at each delegation meeting out to the members. If members are unable to make it, I think 24 hours to register their vote with the delegation administrator. So seeing no, looks like that the LBIs all pass. I think that was unanimous. I see a hand raised from Senator Guzzoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to make a quick point about this. So today is the big day that we receive the budget from the governor. So I actually may be leaving somewhere in the middle of today's meeting. I don't know how long you were planning to go. But lots going on in budget and tax at the moment. We're anticipating this number of bond bills is by far the most we've ever had. And the dollar figure is by far the most. But I think it was in part because everybody anticipating what we've been hearing about the economy and how the status of our budget and some of the one-time monies. I just want to point out that it still may not be a full amount that we'll be able to do for all these projects, but we are anticipating within the governor's budget a spot that is higher for bond bills and legislative initiatives than it has been in the past. So it's all pretty good news for these projects, but we'll just keep doing it like we always do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator Guzani. With that, I think I'll hand it back to Chair Watson for the upcoming bills.
Yes, and we've had a request by the sponsor to hold Council Bill 11 until next week, which we will honor, and we'll move on to Council Bill 13, which is
Delegation bill.
Oh, sorry.
Delegation bill.
Senator Guzani, Delegation Bill 13. That is Senator Guzani's bill, alcohol beverages consumption.
Yeah, can you give me a minute and come back to that?
Sure, we can move on to the
Thank you.
Howard County Sheriff salary bill, which you all have in your materials. This was a bill requested by the sheriff in Howard County. As you can see from the bill language, the previous legislation and law had the salary set at $113,000 for 2022, and that is where the bill stopped. The new bill simply puts the annual salary equal to the salary of a major on step 6 at the Howard County Police Management Schedule. And then that schedule kicks in and takes it from there. In other words, we do not have to go back and revisit the salary of the sheriff in the future because it will be tied to Howard County Police Management Schedule for a major on step 6. That's where it will start, and that's where it will continue to go from there. Do we have any questions on that? Do we have a motion?
Chair Watson, I had a quick question.
Okay, go ahead, Ms.
Yes, ma'am. So in the current step that they're looking at, is that a raise, the same amount of money as indicated, or less money? Like, what is the current majors rate at step 6?
Good question, and I don't know if I have that at my fingertips, but I'm sure I can get it. I can get that for you. Do we have any other questions? Let's hold off on the vote on this until I get that answer to you, which should be today or this morning, and we can move on to the next bill, if that's okay with everyone. Senator Lamb, let's go to the Circuit Court for Howard County Judges bill. Would you like to take that one?
Sure. So we have the Circuit Court for, I guess, do we want to wrap up the alcohol bills? Senator Guzani, are you ready to talk about that one?
Okay.
All right. Yeah, go ahead. So this is Howard County 13-22.
Yeah, this was at the request of the mall. Obviously, outdoor dining during the pandemic has become much more of an issue and an option that didn't seem to be as important before. And this would just extend that and elaborate the ability of the mall to do it. They presented a letter that I'm sure is in your packets that outlines all the security and signage and all the areas in which that they were hoping to expand. This would, I believe, it seems reasonable, and I have faith in the mall and the county government to ensure that this is not an issue that would become out of hand in any way. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Okay. Discussion on, I guess we need to, a discussion on this bill.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second? Now discussion on the bill. Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a good idea. I appreciate you putting it in. I guess my question really is procedural. I think, did this come in after the public hearing? Was it? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's just not in my original notebook and I was confused there. Okay, thanks. I will double check on that.
I see your hand raised from Delegate Novotny. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Gazzoni, are there other malls in Maryland that currently do this? I don't know if we covered that last year. I don't see this as a bad thing per se, but just want to make sure we're not breaking the mold here.
I
Not
do not have that information.
Okay. No, thank you for bringing this up, though. It seems like it will add value to the ability for these restaurants to have a great environment. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the members? All right, seeing none. Abby, will you take the roll on this bill?
Sure. Could you just clarify for me who the second was?
I think that was
I
Delegate
second.
Watson.
Thank you. All right, Senator Lamb, how do you vote?
Yes.
Delegate Watson,
Yes.
Senator Gazzoni,
Yes.
Senator Hester,
Yes.
Delegate Atterbury, Delegate Atterbury,
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol,
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Kittleman,
Yes.
Delegate Novotny,
Yes.
Delegate Tarasa.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, thank you. We can wrap up the part of the agenda that deals with county administration courts. So we have Howard County 6-20 Circuit Court for Howard County judges sitting as orphans court. I think in summary, this bill is intended to make it a requirement that the orphans court judges are barred in the state of Maryland. I think the sponsor of this was Delegate Atterbury. Do you want to go ahead and speak to the bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the bill is actually a constitutional amendment, so it will be voted on by the citizens of the state of Maryland. It would put the orphans court duties and responsibilities, it would wrap them up into the circuit court. Our Register of Wills, Byron McFarland, has indicated it's actually his #1 legislative priority for this session. So in essence, it would, since they would be sitting in the orphans court activities would be wrapped up into the circuit court. I mean, the circuit court judges are in fact attorneys, which all of our orphans court judges are not required to be. It would align us with Hartford and Montgomery County that did this some time ago. I think that Howard County, we've been one of the fastest growing jurisdictions. I actually, along with a couple of other delegates and a couple senators, sat on a work group for the orphans court. And one of the recommendations was that Central Maryland should be treated differently. And so that this was a good idea. And so I move the bill.
Again.
There a second?
Second.
All right, so that was a second from Delegate Taras, I think, and we have a hand raised from, so we can go ahead and have discussion. We have a hand raised from Delegate Kittleman. Go ahead.
I wondered if there's anything that has changed between this year and last year, because my question then, and it continues to be, it seems like this is a solution in search of a problem. Our orphans court judges do a phenomenal job. It's a court that's dedicated to the particular issue that people need fairly responsible and quick answers on. And if it gets put into the circuit court, seems to me that it might take a back seat. The timing might change. And since we already have one that's working, and I know they testified last time, and it seems to be working. It doesn't seem to me to be, we don't need to have lawyers do it. We don't need to put it into the circuit court. Again, unless something has changed that I don't know about between last year and this year. Other than the fact that this group got together, did this group include judges from the orphans court to make this decision?
The group included a representative from the Register of Wills, a representative from the Orphans Court, 2 delegates and 2 senators, and 1 counsel or expert on estates and trusts, if you will. And to be clear, their recommendations were different as related to Central Maryland versus the rest of the state regarding populations and the shore and smaller counties and things like that. So, again, I don't think everybody would agree that our system has been working. A lot of estates and trust attorneys have quietly complained about it to different people, to our orphans court and the way that it is not functioning. But of course, they have to appear in front of them. So it's kind of difficult to outwardly complain. Harford County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, and Baltimore County all require their makeup to be barred attorneys to handle these cases. And so this would align us again with them. It's my understanding that this would be a 1% increase in the workload of the circuit court, and it could be absorbed by the circuit court judges.
Okay, I still, without any response from people who have to appear before it, and I do recognize the issue if someone is an attorney and is unhappy, but it's just something that I don't think needs to be changed. So.
All right. The next hand raised, I think, was from Senator Hester. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, do we have a copy of this report?
I do. I could send it to Abby to send out. It might be up, it's probably up on the website, the Maryland General Assembly website.
If you could send us a link, at least, that would be great. And I guess I wanted to read the report to try to understand why we were treating different parts of the state differently. I mean, I think it's usually important, but I just wanted to understand the nuance. Thank you.
I think part of the reason is population. So when you go to the shore, you have counties that have one court serving as the orphans court because they don't have as many cases. And it would be difficult to create a centralized orphans court in one of those counties, because then you'd have people traveling from other counties to get there. And so they thought that was impractical. And there was talk of possibly for those jurisdictions creating a regional, but we didn't get that far, a regional orphans court. But Howard County's population and being Central Maryland more aligned with the counties that are already doing it this way. But I'll have my office send the link to Abby, who can send it out.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Next, I saw Delegate Feldmark. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, and I think I heard Delegate Atterbury address this. I just want to make sure, this bill shifts the the responsibility to the circuit court judges. As we know, judges aren't typically in the habit of weighing in on legislation. But the one thing I wanted to confirm, I think you said there was some assessment that from a capacity or caseload perspective, this is something that should not be a burden or problem for the system. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, so our Register of Wills did this investigation and spoke with the folks at the circuit court, and they determined that they, without weighing in on whether if this should happen or not, that they could absorb the caseload, and it was, you know, like a 1% increase in the caseload and how they would manage. And they wouldn't be like Montgomery County, they don't meet every single day to hear the orphans court matter. So they would manage how they would hear that. But
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Delegate Feldmark. Next, we have Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Atterbury, and it may be in the report, and if it's in the report, then when that is sent out, I'll take a look at it. I think a year ago, the proposal was that all of the orphan court judges be required to be lawyers. So this is a shift. And I was just trying to understand why this proposal to completely abolish it and move everything over to the circuit court is how this conclusion as the better option was reached. And if you want to refer me back to the report, I can do that.
well, so a couple of years ago, I did have the bill. I don't think it was last year. It might have been 2 years ago. It was a couple of years ago that would have required all of the Howard County orphans court judges to be barred. I withdrew the bill because, I'm trying to make a long story short, I withdrew the bill because there was going to be a work group. And at that time, all these matters went to HDO. They left HDO and went to judiciary. So that put it back a whole nother year. And so we just had this work group during this past interim. And so the recommendation has shifted. That's just kind of the timeline.
I was just asking about the rationale from the work group. And again, it's probably in the report, but there's a reason they think this is a better, I mean, they were looking for an option.
Well, no, my original bill to require orphans court judges to be attorneys was my bill, and my thoughts, speaking with estates and trust lawyers in the county and other people, that they should be barred, that they should be judges because they're judges, they should be barred. So that didn't have anything to do with the work group. And this makes more sense, I think, because in my mind, it solves that problem, because if they're circuit court judges, then one, they will be barred. But also in terms of just aligning us with the rest of Central Maryland and how they do things. And remember, this is going to be left up to the people. So the people have to change this in the Constitution, which is what happened in Hartford and Montgomery County and Baltimore City and Baltimore County, to make those folks have to be actually barred.
I had a follow-up question. Since this has to go before the voters in November, and I think all of the positions for orphans court are up also at that time, does that mean that the individuals that get voted in November still can be non-attorneys, I guess, for that cycle? Is that right? Until it passes fully through and is ratified by the voters?
So I think your question is, if someone runs and they're not an attorney, would they still be an orphans court judge until this is ratified by the voters?
They would be voted in November. But
So
that's
this will be on the ballot in the general election, November 2022.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't
And
that when the current or anyone that wants to run for orphans court can do so, right?
Yeah, I know some people are up. I'm just looking right now.
So would they be able to, if someone is elected in November of 2022 and they're not barred here in the state of Maryland as an attorney, would they be able to complete out their 4-year term?
Well, no, because we wouldn't have an orphans court.
Oh, because of
Because-
how it would go back to the circuit court.
Right.
Okay. So it would essentially nullify those individuals that were just voted in November then, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, but I think so.
Delegate Kittleman, you have a question? Followed by Delegate Feldmark. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is something I hadn't thought of, so thank you, Senator Lamb. Normally, these things won't nullify an election. The people who are elected should be able to complete their term, and the bill would then go in before the next election. But I would request that we put this vote off for at least one meeting so we can get a chance to look at the report and to get some more clarification as to what would happen after this election.
Yeah, I can talk to the drafter about that.
You still have a question?
My question was related to the transition. So if we're holding, I can hold off till we have some more information on that.
Okay. So why don't we have a request to hold.
So can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead, and then Senator Guzoni.
So apparently in 2010, was when that was the election, and it was a constitutional amendment in Baltimore requiring Baltimore city folks to have to be attorneys. So non-attorneys still ran. And then when the measure passed, the non-attorney was not seated.
Looks like Senator Guzoni doesn't have a question.
I have to go. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Delegate Novotny.
Thank you, Chair. Delegate Atterbury, would you be open to a discussion on whether or not we could push this off until the next election, as in make the go live date, if it's passed by the voters, the next election, so that we don't nullify someone who could be elected this time? Just looking for the discussion, I guess.
Yeah, I'm happy to look into the implementation date of the bill.
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. So we have a request to hold. It sounds like there's, I think Senator Hester would like to see the report and potentially an amendment from Delegate Novotny. So why don't we go ahead and hold this bill until next week?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Senator Lamb.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to take us back to the circuit court for Howard County. Sorry, the sheriff's salary.
Okay.
Okay. Delegate Novotny, that number right now is 148, 138. So the previous law said that the salary in 2022 would be 113,000. The sheriff is requesting that it go up to 148, which is this level 6, and remain there as a major. The issue really is that the new courthouse opened and they added more than 25 employees under the sheriff and a much broader scope. And the concern is that we may not be able to attract future candidates with the salary where it is now.
Yeah, Watson, thank you for getting that information back so quickly. I think we all know that attracting the right talent is very important, and cost of living is going up for everyone. So this is great, and especially getting us out of legislating it every few years, just getting it on a normal schedule. So I appreciate it.
That's right. Are there any other questions on this bill? If not, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Was that a second, Senator Hester?
That was,
Question.
that was a second.
Okay. The motion has been moved and seconded, and Abby, you may call the roll.
Senator Lamb,
Yes.
Delegate Watson,
Yes.
Senator Guzoni is excused. Senator Hester.
Yeah.
Delegate Atterbury,
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol,
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Kittleman,
Yes.
Delegate Novotny,
Yes.
Delegate Tarasa.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I'm sure that that will be a good bill for us, public safety in the courthouse going forward. Senator Lamb, I suggest we go to education, although I think we may be holding these. We'll go through each one just to check with the sponsor. The first one is Howard County Board of Education school safety personnel. Delegate Alberry.
Yes, I'm gonna hold this till next week.
Okay. And the next one is the Howard County Due Process Proceedings for Children with Disabilities Burden of Proof, Howard County Bill 2. And that is Senator Hester.
Yes, thank you very much. So this bill is really important in terms of doing right by our special education students and their families in Howard County. Put simply, if a parent believes that their student's IEP is not being followed or implemented correctly, when they file a due process claim, if this bill passes, the school will have to demonstrate that they are following the IEP appropriately, as opposed to the parent having to prove they are not. This makes a lot of sense because IEPs already require schools and staff to collect the data that would prove their case in a courtroom. And our teachers and our attorneys had the expertise necessary to navigate the system. Parents, on the other hand, currently either have to shell thousands of dollars out of their pocket to retain an attorney or risk navigating an unfamiliar legal system on their own, all for the cause of defending their children's right to learn. While statewide efforts to shift the burden of proof have failed since 2013, recently our local Board of Education has voted to support this shift and serve as a pilot program for Maryland. After working with the local teachers union, we've put a sunset on the bill of 5 years to alleviate their concerns. So the teachers union does not oppose the bill. Any questions? Or
Do we have any questions? Oh, I see. Delegate Novotny, I saw your hand there. Are you?
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate the intent of this bill. I think that we need to concentrate on what the educational system is there for, which is getting our students a Class Act grade A education in Howard County. It is, I know that the teachers are there and the teachers unions are there, and hopefully all of those interests align with what's best for our students. But I can't say enough good things about shifting this burden of proof. I've had many people come to me to ask the same question. And I think this is going to be a great way to put Howard County schools, keep them in the first place. So thank you so much for bringing this up.
Delegate Kittleman?
I second everything Delegate Novotny said. And this is one of those things that sometimes lawyers would say, no, don't do that. But the proof has been in finding out that where it has been done, the number of cases actually goes down, and it's a help for everyone. So I hope it gets through this time.
Delegate Hill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Hester, really, thank you for bringing this bill forward. The question I have, we had discussed this, I think a couple of years ago, the delegation in meeting with the school system, when they were leaning towards this, there was some concern that we couldn't do it locally. I like the idea of a pilot, and I just want to know if you can address what has cleared up, that we're not concerned that we can do this as a pilot and it has no implications for the state, because this was discussed before and it was felt that it would be problematic.
thank you for the question, Delegate Hill. My understanding, and I guess I'll have to get back to you on this, was that the concerns were, doing it statewide. And now that it is a pilot, there may still be concerns, but I'm happy to look into that for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I just want to make sure. I think that the idea of calling it a pilot makes sense. And I just wanted to know if there was any additional concerns that we had. I don't think we need to delay this. If the delegation is, happy to move it along, I don't want to delay it for another meeting. I don't think this is something we've all been supporting for a while.
Delegate Ebersol?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I might have missed this. You may have said it, but would we be the only county in the state that would have this pilot program right now? Has any other county tried this prior to us?
We would be the first in the state of Maryland, Delegate Ebersol.
Okay, so we should
be a first.
So it's worth noting that just us passing this may not automatically guarantee passage as it would normally, since it's precedent setting. Thanks, Madam Chair.
I have one question for the sponsor, and you may have said that this, if I might have missed it. Is this something that the school board supports?
Yes, the school board voted to support this.
And so I assume the superintendent also supports it. And that hasn't always been the case. And so that's why I asked the question. So thank you.
We can check on the vote if it's important, Delegate Chair Watson.
I know I'm okay with just the body's decision.
Great.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move the bill.
Second,
The bill has been moved and seconded, and will Ms. Rubling please call the roll?
Senator Lamb,
Yes.
Delegate Watson,
Yes.
Senator Hester,
Yes.
Delegate Atterbury,
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol,
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Kittleman,
yes.
Delegate Novotny,
Yes.
Delegate Tarasa.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next bill is the alternative instruction model policy requested by the school system, and I am going to hold that bill until they can be here for questions, which I know we will have, and hopefully that'll be next week. So that takes us to the Howard County Department of Housing and Community Development Housing Opportunities Trust Fund, which is Delegation Bill 522. Delegate Feldmark, do you want to begin, or?
Sure. I was just putting my hand up, waiting to be recognized. Thank you, Madam Chair. So colleagues, this is, as you know, implementing a recommendation from the Housing Opportunities Master Plan to establish a Housing Opportunities Trust Fund, which is a non-lapsing fund dedicated to increasing affordable housing options. It is, as I said, it's a recommendation of the master plan that the county administration supports, and I'd ask for your support. Happy to answer any questions.
Delegate Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Watson. Delegate Feldmark, where is the fund funded from? Is it out of general funds, or is it a special fund that creates this fund?
So this does not create or dedicate any specific funding. It only creates the trust fund, which the county can appropriate funds to. So those funds would be appropriated through the normal budgetary process.
Okay, thank you so much.
Other questions? Delegate Feldmark, I remember at the public hearing, there was there were some questions from one council member, maybe two, I don't remember, but could you summarize why this would be important for us to set up versus how that member wanted to see it move forward?
Sure. So I don't think there was a specific proposal of how else it might move forward. I think the concern that was raised was a question about violating the county's home rule rights, with a concern that this was housing policy that should be set at the county level. I did consult with the Attorney General's office. They do not have concerns about this being a violation of home rule. This really is a budgetary mechanism creating the non-lapsing fund. So that is well within our rights as the state to establish for the county to utilize.
And in doing so, would the regulations on using the funds be determined by the county?
So the bill sets some parameters based on the recommendations from the master plan, and then the fund would be administered by the county.
Delegate Terraza.
Okay, so just to clarify, so they can set up this fund themselves, right? I mean, couldn't they set up a fund?
Not, they can't set up a non-lapsing fund.
Oh, they can set
By
up a fund,
themselves.
but they can't do a non-lapsing fund?
Right, and so because what they can set up is they could fund a specific pot of funding, right? But that would lapse at the end of the fiscal year and have to be reappropriated each year. They can't legislatively create a non-lapsing fund. So that's why the administration and the housing advocates are looking for this state legislation to establish the fund.
Okay, well, I'm super glad you're doing this and we can talk offline. I'm just confused because of all the conversations we had about housing opportunity trust fund and downtown, but we can talk offline. I'm glad you're doing this.
Any other questions? Delegate Feldmark, once the money from the county goes into the fund, is it a lockbox? Or can it be removed for any reason other than what the mission is of the fund?
It would only be able to be used for affordable housing with the parameters that are laid out within the bill.
So this is a way to give some stability and security to the long range affordable housing mission in Howard County, because the funds would be there. They wouldn't be lost every year. And you would be able to do probably better long-term planning, not subject to the whims of every annual budget.
Absolutely. And that is part of why the non-lapsing fund is important, because a number of these projects take several years of planning. And if you think you have funding, but then next year something else takes priority and the funding evaporates because it's not reappropriated, that you're back to square one.
And do other jurisdictions have this fund?
I believe so, but I am not positive. I can get you confirmation on that if you'd like, but.
I was just curious. Senator Hester?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Feldmark, for your leadership on affordable housing. I had two quick questions. I was trying to remember. First, I assume that the county testified in support of this bill and didn't have any amendments.
Correct. Yeah, I worked with the administration and the housing department on developing it.
I assume so. And the second question is, so the fund consists of money appropriated from the county's budget process and any gift or grant of money made to the fund. I think that's awesome. Does that mean that the private sector and or wealthy individuals or estates could contribute to the fund?
Yes, and that provision is there so that any funding source could be incorporated.
Right. Awesome. So it could be a real public-private, option. Thank you.
Delegate Kittleman.
Thank you. The bill doesn't seem to contain any, and maybe it doesn't need it, any instructions as to how the fund would be set up and who would govern. Is it just a matter of having that housing Department of Housing create the fund and then use it in their budget? I'm just not sure that it just seems like, I don't know how it would be handled, other than the bill does say the money, what the money would go to, but how do we know who is going to be making these decisions?
Yeah, so the fund and the use of the funds would be administered by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So they manage multiple funding programs related to affordable housing, the settlement down payment loan program, other types of assistance. So they would establish their own parameters for administering this fund as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go to Delegate Terraza, but if you have asked a question and your hand is still up, please put it down unless you have another question. Delegate Terraza?
Yeah, thank you. Does that mean that council couldn't set any parameters on this fund?
So council would appropriate funds and has, their existing authority to oversee that.
So they can set parameters for how the fund is used?
I think they can as conditions of the funding.
Can't hear you.
You're muted.
But they can't generally put, I'm confused. So they can't generally put conditions on the fund? I mean, they can't legislate about the fund? Just in the budget?
Well, I mean, they still have the ability to legislate around housing policy, so.
Oh, okay. So they can still do it through policy.
I mean, this certainly doesn't take away any
Okay.
any authority. Right. I think that was part of the concern that was raised with the sort of home rule argument, but this does not impact their authority on housing policy at all.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion? If you're making a motion, we can't hear you.
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Senator Hester seconded.
It was Delegate Hill.
Ms. Rubling, will you please call the roll?
Senator Lamb,
Yes.
Delegate Watson,
Yes.
Senator Hester,
Yes.
Delegate Atterbury,
Yes.
Delegate Ebersol,
Yes.
Delegate Feldmark,
Yes.
Delegate Hill,
Yes.
Delegate Kindleman.
I think it's a good idea, but I'm uncomfortable with the open-endedness of this bill, and we'll vote no.
Delegate Novotny,
Yes.
Delegate Terraza.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Lamb, would you like to take the next one?
Sure. So next we have Howard County 8-22. This is the Commercial Building Excise Tax Board of Education Deferred Maintenance. I believe this bill is sponsored by Delegate Atterbury. Delegate Atterbury, do you want to go ahead and introduce this bill?
Yes, thank you. So this bill is not a new bill. It has been around. It is enabling legislation that allows the council, should they choose, to enact an excise tax on commercial building construction. And the revenues will be deposited into the general fund and used only for deferred maintenance needs that would be identified by the Board of Education. And that's the bill. It's supported by PTAC and obviously opposed by developers and the building association. And I move the bill.
Okay, so
Second.
Thank you, Delegate Raza. I see Senator Hester has her hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you for this bill, Delegate Atterbury. We really do have a problem with deferred maintenance here in probably across the state. My question is about whether this bill would still be, necessary should a statewide bill that I'm working on, pass. And that would be to clarify that the money in the Built to Learn Act, can be used for new school construction and also deferred maintenance of any size.
Well, I'm, not sure. Your bill would, one, have to pass both chambers. And so this would be, I would think, a safety net that gives the tools to the county should they need it. They don't have to exercise it should the state pass something that is significant and contributing to our deferred maintenance problem here in Howard County.
Mr. Chair, if I could just respond quickly.
Yeah, good.
Indeed hopeful that this bill will pass. My understanding is that was the original intent of the legislature when we passed the Built to Learn Act and then overrode the governor's veto, that deferred maintenance would be covered. So just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I see Delegate Kittleman followed by Delegate Hill.
I've just reviewed this quickly, but is there any limit set on how much of a tax the county could assess?
No, that would be up to the county to determine.
Any further? Is that your only question, Delegate Kittleman?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
All right. Next, I see Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Atterbury. I wanted to follow up with you and Senator Hester. I think that one of the advantages of your legislation is that even if all the Built to Learn money went to deferred maintenance, that's a finite pot of money. And as you point out, this would give the local jurisdiction authority that they might not need to exercise for 5 or 10 years, but so that we don't fall further behind, it would also potentially give them the opportunity to accelerate some of the maintenance and the backlog over what the annual appropriations from the Built to Learn are. That being said, I believe that we have a number of caps on different revenue streams that the county has the options to raise, including property tax rates. And I would wonder, Delegate, if you would entertain considering capping the amount as Delegate Kittleman alluded. I think that would make it much more comfortable for me.
Yes, yep, I'm open to any suggestions to a cap.
And I will say that I would not, unless you ask, I would not offer the amendment because there are a number of people more versed in what an appropriate cap would be who are part of this delegation and access. So I'm not offering it as an amendment, but I'm hoping that you'll consider a number. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions from Delegate Hill. We can go on to Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Atterbury, do we know, and you may have said this at one point and I've forgotten, do we have other jurisdictions in the state that have this or have passed enabling legislation for this?
I don't know if there are other jurisdictions that have it specifically for deferred maintenance. There are certainly other jurisdictions that have excise taxes for various needs. I just don't know if they're specifically for school construction.
Right, okay, so that was I guess my question more specifically is do we have any other jurisdictions that tax commercial building for the schools?
I don't know the answer to that, but I could find that out.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Also, did we at one point, maybe last year, get any kind of economic impact statement on the impact of doing this?
I don't remember.
Okay,
Yeah,
just check on that. I don't know if the economic development arm of the county weighed in on this and what kind of impact it would have on the economy locally. So it would be good to know if we have any information on that. And the last question I have is, did we get any kind of reaction from the county on this bill, either last year or this year?
no.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
Thank you. Next, I see Delegate Novotny, followed by Delegate Feldmar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Atterbury, I appreciate you bringing forward this concept. My question is similar to what we were just talking about. I don't know if any of the testimony against had talked about the potential rise, detrimental to the economy, or the potential rise of the cost of living. Do you remember if any of that was mentioned while they were giving testimony against this bill?
I don't remember, but I'm on the drive now, like everyone else can do, and review all the testimony from the hearing. So I'm happy to take a look at that and try to find these answers out for everyone for the next meeting, or have my office do it.
Thank you, Delegate Atterbury.
All right, next, Delegate Feldmar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess one of my questions is, I think, kind of related to what Delegate Watson had raised around the economic impact. I guess I'm a little bit concerned about, we still don't know what the commercial market is going to look like in terms of office space in a post-COVID adjustment. And I guess I'm curious about how that plays into this and how, what new office construction we're likely to see over the next 5 years, when this would be in effect, and if that might be a limited potential anyway. The other question I have, and Delegate Atterbury, if you know the answer, that's great. If not, maybe our delegation counsel could help us out. I guess I'm trying to understand what piece of this is actually new authority. I think my understanding is the county already imposes an excise tax. Are they, is this simply making the connection that it's directed revenue for deferred maintenance? Is it already within their authority to raise the excise tax and then make a budgetary decision to fund the deferred maintenance?
So the new piece is linking it specifically for deferred maintenance needs in the school system. I'm trying to remember the first part of your question.
The office market and kind of the post-COVID office market adjustments.
So I think that and the questions related to the economic impact and a forecast would be hard for the county or DLS to determine, which is why it's enabling if the county sees fit. I think it will be hard to do an economic impact statement, because certainly if the developers or the building association could do that, they would have done that and submitted it to us. They just submitted a general, this will be bad for commercial development in the future. My counter to that, when I met with the building association multiple times, because this bill has been in multiple years, my counter to that was, I'm happy to have the bill sunset, which was in it in the past. I'm happy to, as Delegate Hill suggested, put a cap a cap on it, which I also think was in the past, and it still didn't pass this delegation. But, you know, on one hand, the commercial developers are arguing we want to make Howard County attractive. We do. For them to come here, but we also all want their children to go to our school systems here and have healthy schools and a healthy environment. I think it was 3 years ago, if not more, we were told that it was $500 million of deferred maintenance then. So I'm not sure what the number is now. I can circle back with the school board and try to get that number. But I think that this is just one, you know, tool, and, you know, in that cheesy saying, in the toolbox that the county can use should they need it at some point. They don't have to, you know, pull the trigger on it. And I think it's really significant for parents in our county, which is why PTAC supports it and has supported it for multiple years, and actually helped me work on the initial version of the bill some years ago. So I'm happy, Chair Lamb, to hold the bill and come back and try to get some answers to these questions. A couple I think just don't exist, like an economic forecast, but and hold the vote until next week's meeting.
All right, why don't we complete the comments of the folks that have their hands raised, so we can wrap up the discussion. So I see in this order, Delegate Kittleman, Senator Hester, and then Delegate Watson. Delegate Kittleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you're going to get answers, or maybe you know this one, where it says the Howard County may impose different tax rates on different types of commercial building construction. I know that making those kinds of choices can be done, but the way this is structured, it sounds to me a little, if this is legitimate to do, if it's sort of like you could pick and choose how much you wanted to charge different developers, depending on what they are building. And I just wondered if you had looked at that, and if so, let me know. And if not, I think that might be something good to determine.
I think my initial response to that is just like commercial buildings are divided up into different types, just classifications generally, you know, whether it's a high rise or if it's like the flat, you know, buildings or square footage. So I think that just speaks to that, to keep the tax rate fair, so there's not one set tax rate regardless of the size of the building or the classification of the building.
I think perhaps that might be a better, or if you actually referred to those different types that are already in existence, because if you leave it this open, whoever it is that's raising the taxes, the council could say, well, it just says different types of commercial buildings, and they could create sort of like the redheaded Eskimo. It just, I think it would be better if you connected it specifically to what types of commercial buildings and how that is defined.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Kittleman. No other questions or comments, so we'll go to Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just thinking a bit about the economic impact and the question about what other counties, you know, have done. Is there, and I'm happy to go through the testimony also, but could we ask staff to look at the commercial excise taxes that counties have done, even if it's not specifically for deferred maintenance, just in the last couple of years, and see then if there's any economic analyses like associated with those? Because I understand it could be hard to get one going forward, but maybe we could go looking back.
I know that I have done that in the past, which still wasn't helpful, but to getting it through this body, but I can have DLS take a look at that as well. Also, each year, I just want to point out, Mr. Chair, the school board has supported this bill each year. They're meeting next week, so hopefully they'll vote again to support this legislation as well.
Okay, anything else, Senator Hester? Okay. We'll wrap this one up with Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had two thoughts. One was similar to what Senator Hester just said, in the sense that it would be helpful for me to know if there are other jurisdictions that do allow commercial buildings to be taxed for deferred maintenance for schools. And if that is the case, where they are, so that we can sort of look at backwards whether or not there was any adverse impacts. I also think it would be helpful to hear from Senator Gazzoni with regard to the Build to Learn Act about what we can expect in terms of projections of money for school building in Howard County, including deferred maintenance, if that part of the bill does get adjusted, which I believe that it will, although I admit Delegate Atterbury has a point when she says, you know, this could be a backup plan. So I think those things are important. And also, I would just say, don't be discouraged, Delegate Atterbury, because I think as we go through this, we're learning more and more, and we're understanding more how this could or could not impact things. And so I just wouldn't get discouraged that, you know, we're against the bill. We just have some, I think, questions that would be helpful to our making a decision on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have quite a few pending questions here and some additional research that hopefully will be coming back to us in this coming week and distributed to the delegation. So why don't we go ahead and hold that bill, and then I'll pass it along to Chair Watson for the remaining bills.
Thank you. The next bill is the Howard County property tax credit for seniors to offset property tax rate increase. Howard County 1022. Senator Lamb.
All right, thank you, Chair Watson. So this bill is to, I guess, reflect, you know, some feedback that we have heard periodically, and I've heard as well, to make it a little bit easier for older adults and seniors who are living in our county to be able to continue to reside here. We certainly want Howard County residents who've been here for a while to be able to continue to live in our county and be able to continue their residence here without moving outside of the county. This bill came about because I'd also identified that similar provisions were offered to Baltimore County, which we also represent. And so what this bill does is enabling legislation to the local county council to allow for individuals that are residing in Howard County who have been here for at least 30 years and have an income of less than 75,000 and are at least 65 years old. So really getting at that population to have a tax credit granted to them on their property taxes. The rest of the details are deferred to the council if they choose to exercise this. That includes the duration of the tax credit and any additional eligibility criteria that they would like to layer on top of that. And so that is the bill. It is supported by the county executive's office as well. I think he submitted supportive testimony, written testimony that occurred during the earlier public hearing. So that concludes, I guess I'll go ahead and move the bill. Back to Chair Watson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have some questions, and I will begin with Senator Hester.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you, Chair Lamb, for bringing forward this really important bill. And our office gets this question over and over and over again. My question was specifically on page 2 of the bill under subsection 2.1 that says who has resided in a dwelling for at least 30 consecutive years. And so when I introduced a tax credit in 2019, it was originally 40 years for that tax credit. And then I was trying to bring it down. And then the state I think it was the Budget and Tax Committee just took out, since it was enabling legislation, they took out that limit. So currently the county is on a scale to bring down the number of years over several for the other tax credit. So my question is, would you be willing to, would you entertain striking, that provision and let the county, decide on the length of time the person had lived there? We can talk offline, but that's the gist of my question.
Yeah, I'm always open to suggestions or thoughts on this. I probably would like to know what the potential implications of doing that might be, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline. And we can circle back with the county too.
Either way, this is authorized, enabling legislation for the county, right?
Correct.
Right. So it would depend on what they did. Okay, thanks.
Delegate Novotny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Lamb, I appreciate you bringing this forward, this bill. Would your intent be also that once someone is authorized, they keep that authorization, or are you allowing the council to make those type of decisions specifically?
I think that would be deferred to the council, whether they have to reauthorize or not. And the legislation allows the council to set those parameters.
I appreciate it, Senator. Many of the questions I get is that as people age, they have difficulties doing a lot of this paperwork. And if you have to reauthorize every 5 years and only for 5 years, those kind of things weigh into their decisions on whether or not to stay and retire in Howard County. But I appreciate you bringing forward this legislation.
Great.
Delegate Kittleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love this bill. I love all of the bills that would lessen the tax burden on retirees, because like others, half of my constituency wants to leave because they can't afford to live here when they retire. But my specific question, I think I have done this before and I cannot remember what the numbers were, but what you have is the credit, anything that exceeds 1.014 for each $100 of assessment. My reckoning is that is a very, very, very small dollar amount. And I just wondered if you had that number handy, or somebody could find it out. Obviously it would, change, but say a normal increase to that number any given year.
I think the county had run some figures for us. We can look for those. And if we don't have the answer, we can certainly ask the county to see if they can run some numbers for us and distribute that to the delegation.
Thank you.
Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for this bill. I guess this may be a little bit redundant with respect to what Senator Hester asked, but I'm curious about the 30 years. And we've had some legislation statute in the past that's talked about living in the county for 30 years, but you could live in the residence for less than that. So you could have someone who buys a home in their 20s or 30s, which maybe a generation ago happened. Many people don't get that first home until their 40s. And 30 years later, they're in their 70s, and they may not be in the same home. So they may downsize when the kids leave. Other kinds of changes happen to people in the county. So I'm wondering if you would, why wed it to 30 years, and why aren't we talking about resided in the county or is over 70, or resided in the county in the same home for 30 years, or has been in the home for 20 plus, is over 65, that kind of thing. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think the reason we identified these parameters was really because it was modeled after the Baltimore County enabling legislation. And so those were the parameters that we started from. I'm certainly open to entertaining amendments to that. For example, modifying the residency requirements so that it doesn't need to be in the same dwelling for the last 30 years, that it could be those who simply live in the county for the last 30 years. And thus, if they moved within the county, that may still qualify them for this. I think any of those changes, I would want to check with the county to see what the financial implications of those changes might be.
Sure. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Delegate Kittleman, do you have another question?
I do. Just in response to the last comment, my concern, and somebody tell me if I'm looking at this wrong, but as we all know, people are very creative. And if we limit it to 30 or even 40 years in the county, but not in the House, seems to me that would give people who, if they are going to be turning 65 or who will qualify under all of the other requirements, to look around and buy a home that is more expensive because they know they won't have to pay property tax. So I would hate to open that up as a potential.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make a comment?
Delegate
Since-
Hill?
Thank you. I think the limitation of the income being $75,000 or less is greatly going to impact who can benefit from this tax. We're talking about people with a fixed income. It could also be limited that they can only have a, it has to be a primary residence. There are other things that can be put on, because I think your concerns are correct. How do we, make sure that people aren't exploiting this? But again, and I appreciate what Senator Lamb has said, this is modeled on something that, sort of what our community used to look like. This is not necessarily what our aging population looks like now, and doesn't necessarily capture well enough the people I think the senator is trying to capture, which are the people who are really in need of a break and have been long-term residents of the county. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this? Senator Lamb?
Yeah, Madam Chair, it seems like there are some pending questions that we want to get back to the members with answers about. So I'm going to request a hold while we can get those things clarified. And also, like I said, happy to entertain any suggested, language changes, and feel free to reach out to me in the interim.
Thank you. We have one more bill on the agenda, which is the Howard County disposable bag fees exemption, and that's Howard County 12. Delegate Hill.
Thank you very much. So this bill was introduced upon the request of one of the council members who had concerns raised by constituents who had seen a person on fixed income using SNAP benefits faltering in line at a retailer over the issue of even the 5-cent bag fee. And we talked about this when we originally passed the fee, the fact that people of lower income who may not have access to cars and other kinds of conveniences, who, unlike, say, me, don't carry reusable bags in their car at all times, and on the spur of the moment can go into a grocery store and take my bags in with me, or who travel by bus or other conveyances. What seems like a nominal fee to many of us may not be so nominal to them. We have heard counterpoints, and I think there was some discussion again about this a couple of years ago when the original bill was before us, that somehow to stigmatize people of lower income, that they can't afford that they can't change behavior, or that a modest fee is not an incentive for them to change behavior, is insulting, and that we should expect them to be able to modify their behavior and move away from non-disposable plastic bags just like the rest of us can. And those are the two arguments around this bill. So I introduced the bill because it was requested, and I'm respectful that there are arguments on both sides, and am very interested in what the members of this body feel are the overriding concerns.
Thank you, Senator Delegate Hill. Delegate Novotny?
Thank you, Chair Watson. This is, I think, one of the fundamental issues with passing things like a bag tax is that, you know, members of this this group might have no problem paying the additional 5 cents or purchasing reusable bags and not skip a beat. I think there's a very regressive tax on those who need money the most in our community. And I think as far as modifying behavior, we as me personally would like to stay away from that. I would like the community to decide in the sense that you can go to any store you want. If they want to charge you 25 cents for a bag, that's great. If they want to give them for free, I think that's great also. So I'm a big fan of removing the bag tax in general and allowing people to decide on their own. But I do appreciate you bringing up this important topic.
In response, let me just say that I am not in favor of removing it. I do think that modifying behavior is what we do all the time. That's how we build community. And that when we have the issues with our environment that we have, our failure to modify behavior and to encourage changes in behaviors is part of our problem. But that being said, and I think when the state bill was considered, there were very cogent arguments made by a delegate from Baltimore City about, again, that there is an insult somewhere in there and an underestimation of what people of lower or modest income are able to afford. But thank you.
Delegate Terraza.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Hill.
You're muted again. You accidentally hit your button.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Hill. I appreciate your summary of those arguments. That very well summarizes both the conversation in committee and I think on the floor of the House. So I just wanted to say that. And then also, did the council member describe what the struggle was, or what was described to them as the problem?
Well, at least in one instance, what you report is that the constituent paid for the bags for the person who was in line in front of her, because the person, and I'm not sure what the specifics were in terms of their transportation. And there are issues with bags. I think the information that we have is that the fee has been very successful thus far in terms of behavior and what we're seeing. And we certainly see fewer, plastic bags flying around in trees and on the sides of the roads and going into the sewage system and what have you. So I whether that's been quantified or not, I don't think so. But I think generally it's been well accepted by the residents of Howard County, by the retailers, et cetera. But this was an issue that we discussed before and decided that this was, not something that we needed to be concerned about. And now I think this council member's been hearing from residents that maybe it's something they should take another look at. So like many things, this would be enabling, and the council would have to look a little bit more deeper into the issue to decide whether they wanted to create the exemption. There are alternatives. I've also spoken with Sierra Club and some other advocates, as well as with the council member about whether this is really a discussion to have with the sustainability officer of the county, and look at some alternatives, like whether some of these bags can be distributed, if they can use the funds that they gather to distribute bags to people of lesser income. But again, that doesn't necessarily address the problem of, that means you have to carry them to go where you want to go, which I guess you would, you have to make those decisions anyway. They're certainly easier to carry with you to the store than they are to carry filled with items from the store. So, but there may be some alternatives to this. But again, I guess what we're being asked to do is to give the council the authority that we made a decision not to give them of deciding whether exceptions should be allowed.
Okay,
ahead,
Delegate Hill, let me just say this. We are going to wrap this meeting up in 5 minutes. So I'll let Delegate Feldmark ask the last question, but then Delegate Hill will be thinking about whether you want to hold this bill. Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do know that there was a partnership between the county and Community Action Council to distribute reusable bags. And I think that was, pretty well received. I'm sure there's, potential to do more. I guess one of the points that I think was made in the statewide bill debate is that this is about reducing litter in our community. And certainly the neighborhoods where more people who are, receiving SNAP benefits live deserve litter-free communities also. And so I guess I would hope that we can continue the conversation about other alternatives so that it's not we'll clean up some of our neighborhoods and we'll let others continue to be littered by plastic bags. That's not an acceptable solution from my perspective. So I would ask that we hold it and continue the conversation.
I agree with that.
All right, then we have an agreement to hold this Howard County Bill 12. I want to congratulate the members of the delegation. I think this might be, at least in my time, the first time we've had a meeting where we have gotten through the entire agenda on our first meeting of the year. So that bodes well for the future. We will be starting next week's meeting at 8:30 to try to take advantage of the time. It's slower in the session for us and have longer sessions now, shorter sessions later if we need it. So next week we will be talking again. The first bill on the agenda will be 11, and then we will be talking about 9, 8, 22, and 12. You will receive an official agenda, so don't hold me to that order, but that is what it looks like for the following week. Thank you everyone for being present and engaged and having a great discussion today. Senator Lamb.
Yeah, nothing else to add. That's great. Amazing work from the delegation. Thank you all.
Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.